Hi,
Hello,
Liz.
everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our workshop on healing our parts and patterns.
And we'd like to start with just a statement saying that yes, we can change. We can fundamentally change who we have been in the past. We can change who we are. We can discover and heal the parts and patterns that we've picked up from childhood, from our parents. We can become somebody new, and we can change our past and our present and the future. Because when you do change who you are, when you discover parts and patterns and then you heal parts and patterns, you are changing your past, your present, and your future. And hello, Liz, Steve, and Needy. I hope I said that right. And
Hi,
Heike.
Key. So, if you joined us 2 weeks ago, we did a workshop on discovering our parts and patterns. And so, this is the second part. And if you were not there, we invite you to watch the recording of this workshop so that you can get the full comprehensive view of what patterns are, what parts are, and how we can clear them, map them, clear them, and heal them. So today we'll be focusing on the healing our parts and patterns.
And we're going to ask you to please participate in the workshop and to work with us and let us know what you're working on and ask questions, please. That all helps the process. You're not interrupting. You can type them in the chat. Hello, Juan. Juan says hello again. Heart, heart, heart. So excited to be here. Man, your glasses are cool. Yeah, well, you know. Thank you.
So yeah, we really like for the workshops to be interactive. We could talk very generically about parts and patterns and how to heal them. And ultimately, we're here to serve you and to really bring you solutions and techniques and processes that work for you and for whatever it is that is going on in your life. So
well said. And did we say thank you to John Jones yet?
not yet.
We like to always say thank you and send blessings to our wonderful spiritual teacher, John Jones. And if you would please, if you benefit from this workshop and you can afford it, if you could provide some donations, that supports us and it supports Insight Timer. And if you want to watch this again, a recording will be available on our website, as well as the recording of the prior workshop, Discover Parts and Patterns, as well as many other workshop recordings, some free, some not.
So why don't we begin by essentially connecting to our intention for this workshop? It's very important whenever we do anything that we're really connected to why we're doing it and why it's beneficial to do it, and that we center ourselves and we ground ourselves. So I'm going to begin by a very short practice to help you do that. So if you'll begin by finding a place of comfort where you can relax your body and open and expand your awareness so that you can feel more present, more grounded. And being present and grounded is very important when we're uncovering new things, because it allows us to actually integrate the information not just in our minds, not just mentally. It helps us integrate in our body, in our subconscious mind, and emotionally, in our emotions, in our feelings. So as you center yourself, as you ground yourself, as you feel yourself present in your body, if you'll connect to your intention for being on this workshop today, why you came to this workshop, your intention of healing and clearing parts and patterns that no longer serve you. things that you might have inherited through conditioning, and that you recognize to bring about detrimental dynamics in your life. And you can voice out this intention. You can say, I choose to clear and heal any and all parts or patterns that no longer serve me right now. And feel that in your heart, what it feels like to choose, to intend to clear and heal patterns and parts that are not serving you. Maybe bringing your hands to your heart and feeling grateful for that intention. Realizing that it's safe to surrender those patterns, that it's beneficial, and that in surrendering our ego, which patterns are a part of, we can achieve great inner peace, great joy, more love. And so connecting to that, the liberation of the old energy that can now be focused on something that you wish to create, something that you wish to experience. Then you can either visualize or feel this old energy liberating, leaving, and finding yourself very grounded and in alignment with the intention to clear any and all parts and patterns that you choose to clear today. And then feel that through your entire body, this energy, your free will choice. And you can open your eyes, and let's begin with the workshop.
So we had a question from Amy. Is this IFS? And I asked her what acronym that was. She said Parts Work, Richard Schwartz, IFS. And then Steve said, Amy, I believe not. And then Amy said, IFS, Internal Family Systems, fully loving and embracing all parts of ourselves so that we can heal the parts of us that were trying to protect us. Wow. I'm impressed by that. So yes, this is our version of Parts Work. Our version of Internal Family Systems. We can't speak to Richard Schwartz's work because we don't know him. We can't speak to the IFS system and whoever produced it because we don't know that. We have learned about parts and patterns and the way we inherit family systems. And some people talk about family constellations. We do family constellations as well. That's it. What we're working on today is a very grounded and practical and conscious approach to understanding the parts of ourselves and where they come from, and most importantly today, healing them. So certainly many parts come from our parents, many parts come from the collective consciousness. No part is who we are. Amy says, yay, thank you, flower, 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 flower. Red roses, right? I think they're roses. So glad to be here. We're so glad that you're here. Thank you, Amy. Where do we begin, my love?
So I wanted to bring up a little bit of context to help you. So when we are in the process of healing parts and patterns, resistance can come up. And the more we're connected to why it's helpful to preemptively and proactively work through our parts and patterns, the more we can align with that intention and therefore do it. So oftentimes people will focus reactively when they're in a part or pattern on trying to get out of it. That said, by essentially working while triggered, while we're in a part or pattern, there's dysfunction to that process. It's difficult for us to actually achieve this clearing or this healing because we're already in the emotions of the pattern. And so if we're triggered and we're feeling angry or we're feeling sad or we're feeling judgmental, it's going to be difficult for us to say, oh, I'm in a pattern, to even realize that we're in a pattern and then to clear it. So this context can give you some fuel to really work preemptively, meaning really just put aside, let's say 5 minutes a day or 10 or however long you have to work on.
Or an hour a day.
Exactly, on deconstructing your patterns. Because if you do it reactively, it's not going to be necessarily as effective, and you're not necessarily going to be in a state of consciousness where you're really receptive and able to perceive all the different ways in which the pattern is actually functioning. Including, and I know I said that, and I want to reiterate, when we're in a pattern, we don't even know that we're in a pattern. So it looks like reality is the way that it is, and it's essentially not transparent to us, not apparent to us that we are in a pattern.
So it's like right after, say someone gets really triggered when, you know, a glass falls and breaks and they break something and they go into lack, and, you know, because the glass cost money and now someone could get hurt and someone could then that could lead to hospital bills. Say they grew up in a household like that. And if Alessandrina and I look to the side, it's because we're looking at our notes to plan what's next. So say that someone drops the glass and bam, that the person gets triggered. They start to feel all the things that their parent used to feel when a glass was spilled. They feel the judgment of their parents. They feel their fear of abandonment and pain from when their parent used to get upset with them. And all of that is up and running, even though now they're, you know, a 50-year-old adult. And so is that, if that's your partner, is that the time as your partner's like clearly upset and fuming? How reachable is your partner in that moment? How easy are they to communicate with and work with? Usually they're pretty triggered and pretty closed off, right? So in ourselves, when we are triggered, that is a good time to take steps to relax, to calm down. And it's just a whole lot more work to clear and heal a pattern when we're triggered in it than if we were to go about it proactively and preemptively with a little bit of time each day. Most people don't do that proactive work. Most people just work on stuff when it, you know, becomes a big enough problem and painful enough in their lives. If you do this a little bit each day, then you're actually significantly reducing the number of problems and the impact that they have.
Yeah, so you can, rather than essentially putting out fires, you really, which can lead to being in that pattern of constantly being in a reactive state in life if we're putting out fires, instead of not even having the fire. So if we work on our patterns and parts, then we don't even have those fires to put out. And now our energy can be very focused and dedicated to our intentions, to what is most important, fulfilling, and meaningful to us in our lives.
We can essentially create an environment where there are no fires, a moist environment, or a positive pressure environment, an environment where our aura is so filled with positive light energy, conscious energy, that we are able to navigate consciously when things come up rather than getting triggered into our patterns.
Yeah. So in terms of when you're already in the pattern, I was going to share a pattern interrupt process today, and we decided, for the sake of time and also for focus, to not do that. And I will be releasing a meditation where If you haven't yet worked on a pattern and it comes up, you can interrupt the process and begin the healing of that pattern as it comes up.
And we'll be sending that meditation out via our newsletter on our website. So, and the reason we're not doing pattern interrupt process today is because we want to focus really on this proactive process of healing patterns. Not necessarily, in a way, a pattern interrupt process is damage control, if you know what we mean. It's like to reduce the negative, non-optimal, unwanted reactions that we might have when we're triggered. So if we get triggered and we can feel ourselves going into anger and frustration and sadness, that's an excellent time to interrupt that pattern and to bring yourself back to a state of calm. And even if you do that, that doesn't mean that you've healed the pattern. Once you've done that, it's optimal to then heal the pattern also.
Yeah, and this is very important because the longer you are in the pattern, the longer the refractory time of the pattern, the more difficult it is to break the addiction to being in that state of emotion and in the pattern. And when you're in a certain energy, the thoughts that come to you, the emotions that come to you that are associated with that energy of being triggered in a pattern, they don't allow you to be in the energy of the solution and find a way to essentially get out of the pattern and experience a different reality.
Someone's asking what's our website. It's just dexternalessandrina.com. So what's next, my love?
Mapping your parts and patterns, the recap.
Okay, so it's essential that before we talk about healing parts and patterns, that we do a very quick recap on discover your parts and patterns, because truly that is the first step in healing your parts and patterns. You can't heal that which you don't know. You can't heal that which you can't see. It's very hard to. Certainly the divine and spirit and God can. And if we want to be self-empowered, it's so important that we develop self-awareness so that we can develop awareness over the parts and patterns that we want to heal. And in a way, there is one of the traps that people fall into is they think that they've become fully aware of a pattern, when really there's more to it. There's more to it, more dimensions to it, more depth to it, more breadth to it. And so we'll quickly review what we reviewed in the last workshop, Discover Your Parts and Patterns. Every pattern has many different aspects and dimensions, and a pattern will have like a trigger, right? Things that trigger it. It will have a feeling in the physical body, in the emotional body, in the energetic body. Did I say the physical body?
Yes.
In the spiritual body and in the mental body. It will just have a feeling. And it'll also have a role. Like we'll usually, when we're triggered in a pattern, go into like a male role, a masculine role, or a feminine role, or a parent role, or a child role. So, or a business person role, or a fixer role, or a helpless role. So there's roles. Of course, there'll be emotions: anger, sadness, frustration, hatred. And there'll be fears, beliefs, expectations, judgments, attachments to things, aversions to other things. There'll be things you tend to do and say when you're in that pattern, things you tend to think. A pattern will have its own implications. Like when you operate from a pattern, what are the implications that it has then on your life? Is it creating separation in your relationship, for example, and misunderstanding? And patterns tend to have a source, and past experiences that we've interpreted in such a way that we've stored a perspective that sort of tends to generate the pattern. This could be past experiences in this lifetime, another lifetime. It could be something we saw in a movie. So this is to help you understand the multidimensionality of patterns and how useful it is to begin to fully map a pattern. And to, in essence, never let your mind, which always tries to have certainty and to know, don't let your mind try to put a period, meaning to assume that you've uncovered the whole pattern. Allow yourself to be humble and to constantly, continuously explore and discover, because that is what's going to lead to the best results for you. It can feel, from an ego perspective, good to say, oh, I know this. I see all of this. I've cleared all of this. From a soul perspective, it is so much more beneficial to say, I have uncovered this and I'm uncovering more. I have discovered this and I'm discovering more, and to remain open to becoming aware of more and more and more, and having no attachment and no aversion in that regard. Because that's why we're here, in a sense, is to discover our ego and completely heal and release our ego. And so many people are in such a rush, they want to say, oh, I'm there now. And that is part of an ego strategy, a sort of safety strategy, a better than strategy, a self-image strategy, a social image strategy, an identity and social identity strategy. Did I say better than strategy?
Mm-hmm.
So
it can feel unsafe and socially even abandonable and emotionally abandonable to become aware of our patterns, because subconsciously we can project the implications of having that pattern and what it means in our relationship, what it means about us. Of course, it doesn't mean any of those things. And the more we really ground ourselves in that understanding, and we don't judge the pattern, and we realize any part of us that feels unsafe having this pattern, the more we can actually dig into the pattern really deep and therefore comprehensively resolve it. The moment that we try to escape the pattern, that we say we've understood it all, or that we say, oh, I feel this because, and we essentially say that we have this pattern because our partner is a certain way, or we have this pattern because life or things are a certain way, we will not be as able to really comprehensively map and therefore clear the pattern. And it can regrow. Patterns regrow. If we don't really, it's just like if you were taking out weeds in your yard and you didn't take out the roots, they would regrow. So it's the same thing with patterns. And so it's important to be open and to explore. A lot of what we do, which is why we don't necessarily use any processes like, for instance, the what was the name, babe? The family, the IFS. Was it the family IPS or IFS?
Yeah, IFS.
Yeah, so we don't necessarily operate from systems, because Dexter and I were very committed to exploring for ourselves what we uncover through consciousness, and then sharing with you, not a model, not a system, really what we consciously perceive. And then we invite you to do the same thing, not to say, oh, Dexter and Alessandrina said to do it this way, so I'll do it this way. Simply to kind of get a feel for what we're sharing, and then to explore for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Meditation, if there's judgment in your meditation towards yourself or towards what you're looking at, it's going to be counterproductive to really being in a meditative state and really uncovering, right? Meditation is about becoming familiar with. How can you become familiar with anything if you're operating from a model or an intellectual vantage point? Only through experience, by exploring for yourself.
And that's in no way meant to be any negative commentary on any system or process or utilizing those. It's excellent to find models and use models and systems to map life and to map the spiritual process. That said, it's important that we don't mistake in the map for the territory. The maps we make, they're two-dimensional. They are systems. They are belief-based. And to an extent, they have embedded control strategies in them. Whereas the territory, which is our energetic and spiritual process of life and death and beyond, is not black and white in those ways. It is not two-dimensional. It is highly multidimensional. And so getting what you can from us, from other systems, from Alessandrina and I have studied systems, certainly. We've studied
family constellation,
past life
hypnosis.
regression, hypnosis, a lot of different psychology areas. So systems can be the chakra systems, which is one of the most beneficial systems we've found, and actually representative of what we're all going through. So that said, at the end of the day, the healing process cannot be controlled. The healing process is not something that can be known by the mind. It's not even the mind that we're really trying to heal. The mind will try to know things, will try to analyze things, will try to have control over life, when really there's, below the brain, there's so much more going on here. So much more. And so what can we do? We can have intentions, and we can sustain those intentions, and we can refine those intentions, and we can practice some fear release work, and we can practice some emotional healing work, and we can practice affirmations, and we can practice self-discovery and self-awareness, and we can practice attaining deeper understanding, deeper compassion, more unconditional love, more consistent inner peace. And all of that together, the systems, the practices, the meditations, the intentions, and of course the spiritual guidance of life combines to facilitate us. And it's all fueled by your wisdom, your intention, your intuition. And that's good, because no one lives life in your shoes. Only you do. And that's the way it should be.
And by the way, this process, all these different models and processes and techniques that Dexter was describing, they essentially, what they do is they help you align with spirit. They help you align with pure consciousness. And when you do that, then again, models and systems are great because they point to a truth, and then it's up to you to experience that truth and to integrate that truth and to ground that truth in your whole being, in your whole system.
And that's so important, the grounding. A lot of people say, I did this practice and it didn't work. Well, that's not how it works. In order for us to experience the change fully and completely, the understandings, the awareness, the consciousness, the healing must be grounded into all parts of our being, all the way to our feet, and all the way to the center of the earth. If we have a central channel that goes from spirit all the way to the center of the earth, it must be grounded. Thank you for the lovely feedback. Amy's saying, you two are already a breath of fresh air in the integration of spirit, revealing more. Staying humble. Yes. What beautiful words. Thank you. And Corinne says, I love what you are sharing. Thank you. Thank you. This feedback really helps us. We actually pay very close attention to your feedback and your comments and questions. So thank you. Amy said previously, I've been stuck in trauma PTSD loop with my partner. Understandable. That is a global situation. So you're not alone. When we get triggered and limbic system is active, then we put out the fire afterwards. Mm-hmm. Understood. And it sounds like you have a good process going. And if you can start to work proactively and perhaps engage in discussion, team-oriented discussion, collaborative discussion, highly intentional and focused discussion with your partner about some of these patterns when you're calm.
And you feel safe.
And maybe you have a safe place that you feel. Where do you and your partner get along most? Where do you feel most comfortable with each other? Maybe it's in the car. Maybe it's cuddling in bed. Maybe it's in nature. Maybe it's cooking. Whatever it is for you, if during those times you can separate some time to discuss in a very open and loving way, non-judgmental way, some proactive parts and pattern work.
Yeah, and when you do so, whenever you're going to communicate something, if you start with your own patterns It's very important, taking accountability so that you model and embody for your partner, you know, what you're doing, and they can then feel safe. If you're being vulnerable and humble and opening up about your own patterns and your process of clearing your patterns, then it can inform your partner, oh, I now feel safe to do the same thing. Whenever and however it happens. It might not happen, at in the same time. You might have the conversation where you're the one sharing, and by modeling and embodying the energy, a shift can occur in your partner.
So we'd like to share some understandings about the healing process that we hope will clear up misunderstandings about the healing process, because there are many. And it's usually our misunderstandings about the healing process that get in the way of the healing process. So the healing process can't be controlled. It can't be known. It can't be defined. It can't be written into a sentence. It probably can't even be put into any model. All of that is just trying to use words and mind and language and images, right? And really recorded interpretations of reality, which are not reality itself, to try to model something. Second, I wanted to add, especially relevant to the relationship healing process that we were just talking about, that I've never seen a relationship pattern that was one-sided. Never. So if anyone's ever saying, my partner has to do this and it's not doing this and it's not doing anything and I'm doing everything, I've never seen that to be true.
It can, because energetically, for a pattern to exist, on the other side of it, there must be another pattern reacting to that pattern. So, not to say that someone can have inherited a pattern from childhood, and that's not directly relevant to this partner that comes from their parents, essentially. Simply saying that for the pattern to unfold and to manifest in the context of that specific relationship, there is energy on the other side, either judging the pattern, an energy of fearing the pattern, an energy that entangles us with our partners. So when we can take 50-50 accountability in that process, then we get much greater results. Oh, I have this pattern and you're a mirror to me with this pattern, and how can we make adjustments so that our patterns don't trigger each other the way that they do?
So another understanding to communicate about the healing process, the chakra system is extremely helpful for this. Specifically learning to feel what you feel in your root chakra, which is what most people refer to as like the primal survival brain. The part that wants to kill your partner, or the part that gets angry and really upset, the survival and stress parts of our system, the fear and fight or flight and reactive parts of our system. You can actually learn to feel that happening in your root chakra, in the energy center that exists at your tailbone. And you can also feel it in the second and third energy centers, the one right below the belly and the one here. So you can feel it, the really like intense energy in your root chakra. You can learn to feel that. You can learn, one second, my love. You can learn to feel that, which is all about like survival. Then you can learn to feel also the rather anxious energy below your belly button, here, below your belly button. And that's usually oriented towards like relationship and money. Relationship, money, resources.
So your sacral chakra.
And then your third chakra, which is heavily mental, very mental focused. It's all about planning. It's all about past and future, and thinking about the past and future and analyzing.
And intellectualizing the process.
Definitely. So if you have a pattern, you can be sure that those 3 chakras are basically compromised by those patterns in some way, shape, or form. And you'll find some people that, usually men, who approach patterns in a really intellectual way, it's because they're processing it from the 3rd chakra. And women who might process it very emotionally, but that's because they're in the 2nd chakra. And both are being affected by the root chakra. Both are in fight or flight. So
I'd like to add, in terms of the root chakra and feeling what you're feeling there, the reason why that's so important is when you go into your root chakra and you allow yourself to feel the energy there and all the different things that manifest, that are generated from this energy at that level, you are in the process of transmuting it. So when you sit with it, when you stay with it, when you feel it, when you observe it, when you're with it, you are starting the process of transmuting that energy. If you go into your mind and you intellectualize the pattern, you might not comprehensively resolve that energy. You might imagine what the energy is and start to think your way through the pattern instead of, oh, this is what this feels like. And it's not comfortable. Being in the root chakra and really feeling what we feel is not going to be comfortable. And ultimately, I believe it's Carl Jung that said, the way out is through. It's by sitting in this discomfort that we realize the illusion of it, that we realize that we're projecting something, interpreting something in such a way that is triggering that energy and the thoughts and the emotions associated with it.
So love, I have some appointments later today, and I wanted to know, like, in terms of healing parts and patterns, how long does it take? Does it take a long time? Like, because I have like 30 minutes. Will my ego be gone? Well, I won't have any fear left after this, right?
No fear.
So how long does it take?
It takes what it takes, right? The process of humanity, we've been evolving as a species, and all of the collective consciousness material is flowing through us. So how many patterns, how many parts exist in humanity? If you look at the behaviors around us and how much dysfunction there is and how much non-optimal dynamics there are many of them. And so those things process through us. Our past lives, if you believe in past lives, they also process through us until we've resolved them. We've identified the parts and patterns influencing us, and then we remove that influence from the process. So it takes however it takes, and if you can feel safe with that, if you can really have no expectation and accept that and love that.
Surrendering to the uncontrollable process of healing.
And realize that it's a wonderful adventure. And sometimes we'll feel great, and sometimes we will feel uncomfortable or very afraid or out of control, and that's okay. It's part of the process.
And we can trust that those feelings of being out of control and afraid are just illusion that we're still conditioned into, that we're still working to clear. So someone by the name of Doctor asked, so the solution is to sit in the energy of the trigger? So remember that the mind is going to try to come up with one thing that is the solution. And the solution itself is multidimensional. That's why we're suggesting that you surrender to the process and allow it to unfold. This is not, I understand that that's not like a tangible, concrete to-do item, and which is what the mind loves. That said, the mind is not the best friend for healing in a way that to lead with the heart when it comes to healing is excellent. And you ask an excellent question. So is the solution to sit in the energy of the trigger? Well, if there was a solution, it would be to ground completely the light of consciousness into your entire being so that all that's left is inner peace and unconditional love.
And alignment with spirit.
And that there's nothing else left. Part of that process is getting in touch with what is in our systems, what is in the way, what is blocking the light from filling our systems completely. And our patterns are those things. Our patterns literally block our energy system from receiving the light of consciousness and spirit and love and inner peace. And so people try to navigate life by suppressing those patterns, but it doesn't actually unblock them. It just renders them unconscious.
And they continue to be triggered.
And suffer from the pattern. So rather than do that, we would recommend getting in touch with and allowing yourself to feel the pattern in all aspects of it. You could say that knowing the pattern is different than knowing all parts of the pattern is different than being able to feel all parts of the pattern. And that in essence, being able to feel all parts of the pattern is to really know the pattern. And in a sense. And so certainly getting in touch with, when you're triggered, what that feels like is good. Also getting in touch with all the other aspects of pattern that we described in the beginning of this workshop and in the Discover Your Parts and Patterns workshop. Surrendering to the trigger. Well, that could mean what? If someone says something mean to you and you want to punch them in the face, does surrendering to the trigger mean you punch them in the face? Or does it mean you allow yourself to feel the desire to punch them in the face?
So that you can actually really understand where it stems from. Because the moment that we surrender to what we feel, now we are able to feel and understand what is driving that trigger or that reactivity in our system. If we reject it, if we judge it, if we suppress it, repress it, distract away from it, we can't look at it. We can't comprehensively understand why we feel the way we feel.
So it is a process of, we have a question from Phoebe. Can you give examples of subtle patterns that trigger and drive us? Sure. And any more details you can provide would help us answer your question better. So can you give examples of subtle patterns that trigger and drive us? A subtle pattern.
Well, you can have a pattern, for instance, of not feeling good enough. That's subtle.
And then if you get a D in class, then you're going to feel not good enough. Or if your boss tells you, hey, this wasn't very good, and when he's telling you, rather than just being at peace and loving yourself, you start to feel bad, then that pattern is getting triggered.
And in addition to that, if you have that pattern, which can be a subtle pattern, you will have a lens through which you experience all of your relationships and all dynamics. And to some degree, you will feel that all these experiences and dynamics are a reflection of not being good enough.
A few more examples of patterns. Anything that isn't conscious inner peace and unconditional love. So that includes feeling stressed whenever you feel stressed. That includes in whatever you feel stressed about.
Worrying as a process of imagining that the worry is going to lead you to find a solution.
Overeating. Hating exercise or being addicted to exercise. Any and all addictions to distraction.
Thinking through life.
and the types of thoughts you have are patterns. Feeling small or like a victim, or feeling big and great and better than others. How many people have patterns like this?
Competing and comparing.
Competing and comparing. Feeling lack about money. Feeling lack about anything at all.
Yeah, being also limited in our perception of time and reality. That's also a pattern.
Wanting and desire is a pattern. Because if you want something and you're desiring things, how can you truly be at peace here if you're busy grasping for things? So all wanting of sex, status, beauty, money, power, control, certainty, knowledge, all of that is patterns. So most people, most egos, spend the whole day going from pattern to pattern. And it is enlightened beings who have cleared all patterns sit in peace, in silence, in stillness, and in pure unconditional love.
Yeah, and in consciousness with a lot of energy, because our patterns, they drain our energy. Again, even if we suppress and repress them, they're busy subconsciously like narrating our life and what is happening and reacting in some way or another. And that can lead for some people to like an underlying feeling of anxiety that's always there, because what's happening inside is there's a bunch of patterns that are constantly getting triggered and suppressed, triggered and suppressed.
A few more things to add. If you fully cleared a pattern, there is no longer a sense of I in yourself that feels that pattern. So whatever it was that in that pattern you used to feel or think, there is no longer a sense of I that feels or thinks that. There's no body here anymore that experiences that. So if you have a problem in your life or something you want to change, once it's healed, one day that problem simply won't exist. Now, some people might say, oh, well, I had a problem. I wasn't making enough money and I felt terrible. And then I made a lot of money and then I don't feel terrible. So I cleared the pattern. Not necessarily. Because what happens if you were to make another decision and lose some money and then you feel terrible about yourself again? So truly, when we clear and heal a pattern, we are free. And there's no external situation that can bring up that pattern again, that internal feeling. And so the world is doing a great job of constantly helping us become aware of our patterns, of the patterns that we still have left to work through. And it does that in the form of negative emotions. So you can be sure that if you have any form of negative emotion or negative thought, that's pointing to a pattern in you that you can clear and heal. It is not pointing to a problem in somebody else or something. Because that would be a process of trying to control reality and be codependent on reality for yourself to feel good.
Which would mean that your inner peace, your joy, your quality of life would now be dependent on external conditions, including people changing for you to feel okay, which is, it's a process that keeps you stuck in a cycle rather than just operating accountably and self-sovereignly and choosing to clear your own patterns.
Deb asked, is that possible? I think, Deb, please be more specific.
I think about completely clear, being in a state of essentially enlightenment. Yes, it's possible. Yeah. It's called enlightenment.
We've witnessed it firsthand and verified it. And we're not speaking about ourselves here. We try to never speak about ourselves or where we are because it doesn't serve you. So we speak about other people. We've met many people that say they're enlightened, and we've found no, maybe
that there
not.
Was still ego.
There's still more to work through, and we have met one person,
John Jones.
John Jones, and Krishnamurti really got far, really far, and you can watch Krishnamurti speak on YouTube.
So, and that can be an intention of yours, in this lifetime, or to work towards that, and to be okay. By the way, there's a story, I don't know if I've shared it before, there's a story of a man who was a robber and a killer who goes to a spiritual master. And he really, very humbly and vulnerably is wanting to achieve enlightenment and to clear his past and his pain and suffering, and is not expecting when it will happen, how it will happen. And so he asked the spiritual master, he says, how many more lifetimes before I reach enlightenment? And the spiritual master, there's a tree close to him, and says, you see this tree which has like thousands of leaves on it. He says, as many lifetimes as there are leaves on this tree. And the robber, in that moment, is filled with a sense of gratitude and peace, and becomes enlightened.
Because most people would look at all those leaves on the tree and say, oh my God, I have so much to go, so much left, it's so much work, so much suffering. And rather than process it that way, the thief was grateful. The thief accepted and loved and appreciated the process. And he said, oh, I only have that much to go, even though it looked like such a huge quantity. And in that moment, in the story, grace, divine grace, reaches down and grants him enlightenment because of how he presented himself, how he processed it and how he chose to process it. So there's tremendous help and support for anyone who does really want to heal their parts and patterns, rather than blame and things like that. A few more questions to address.
And by the way, this story can give you the compassion, the patience, and the capacity to work through things and the pain and suffering and the discomfort that is associated with that process, and to find great peace.
So Dr. also Satnam, who asked, so the solution is to sit in the energy of the trigger, said that totally makes sense. I understand. The experience to build a relationship to the pattern with compassion. Excellently put. Excellently put. You do want to build, in a sense, a relationship to the pattern with compassion. And once you heal the pattern, then you become one again. And there's no relationship because there's no pattern. And the process at first requires a sort of relationship to the pattern, a healing, loving relationship. And any pattern, any parts of ourselves that we try to clear, whenever we work with ego, it is highly recommended that you are very loving and gentle with yourself, that it's all okay. Any part of you, any thought, any emotion, no matter how others might judge it, no matter how others might say, ooh, I would never say that or feel that, or only bad people and terrible people think that, and you are so any thought, any emotion is okay. It's none of it makes you a bad person. All of it is good.
Yeah, and remember the point of reference that you are a conduit for the collective consciousness to purge, to clear, to heal all of those thoughts, energies, and emotions. So when you can accept them and not operate from a projection of what the collective consciousness or others might think about that, and then from your self-image react to that. When you can sit with it, you are transmuting that energy, you are clearing it, you are healing it.
Amy says, ego, edging God out. I've never heard that acronym for ego before, and I don't understand it. I would typically say...
Well, it means taking out the God from
Go ahead.
If you're in your ego, you're not allowing yourself to
the process.
experience.
Correct. Excellent. Yeah, ego does edge God out. Is activation of the ego ever a healthy voice to trust? Is ego always in the mind an illusion? Is it ever inner wisdom? So briefly, people want to simplify things, and one of the things, energetically speaking, we've seen people simplifying is to say that everything exists just in the brain, for example, when really we're a distributed network of cells and processing. So we can literally, in a way, have thoughts in our arm or in our root chakra. It's happening all over. If we could call all of that mind, we would suggest that ego is always a form of unconsciousness. Ego is always a form of illusion. There's no belief that can be conscious. There is no judgment that can be conscious. No good or bad judgment.
No aversion, no
attachment,
expectation, fear. So it's all unconsciousness.
And if rather than trusting the voice of your ego, you would trust the voice of your heart, in your soul and cultivate that inner wisdom. Ego is not ever wisdom. Ego is just recordings. Literally just recordings. And a lot of people's personalities are recordings put together that get triggered. Like, you can notice this if you watch a child start watching, Dora the Explorer, and the next day she's like walking around the house like Dora the Explorer. And you can literally watch a child as they become impressioned and conditioned by the different characters that they relate to on TV. And they come home and they start using the same words that their teacher uses, these expressions that were never part of your household. Human beings grab these recordings that they think will help for survival and then spit them back out when they think it helps for survival. And all of that is an unconscious process.
By the way, one experiment to uncover how the ego operates that can be very informative and that can also help you heal patterns and parts is to put a camera in your home and to watch yourself, or and like to record yourself all day and then to watch how many parts and patterns you go into throughout the day. It's very informative and educative.
And you can learn to do this, although there's nothing that replaces the actual camera. You can learn to do this with your consciousness. You can learn to observe yourself with no judgment and to really see like what you do throughout the day. And some people would be horrified. And that's okay. Whoever,
their ego would be horrified.
Right. Whatever part of them is horrified, it's just another ego safety strategy. So T asked, how about reading other people's triggering messages? How to protect against that? Well, you can learn to map and model your partner or another person's what we would call fear minds. So like all egos have self-defense systems, and you know this because anytime you've ever gotten into an argument and someone got mad at you and you were doing your best and they got mad at you and the conversation didn't go well, and you know that you've stepped on one of their ego's triggers or fear minds. The minds that for example, in the Middle East, that they're planted beneath the sand, you step on them and they explode. Well, everyone's ego has these self-defense mechanisms, and you can learn to map and model anybody's self-defense mechanisms and fear minds and traverse them so you don't step on them, and so that you can actually reach them as they stand there in the middle of their minefield.
And I have a metaphor which is funny. With some people, they're so guarded that it's like they're in a castle, so you can't enter. And so the best way is to go and find a way through consciousness to parachute down
or to tunnel in from the bottom. And there are ways to reach people. Everybody has a heart. Everyone can be reached.
And in addition, my suggestion, we just released a meditation called self-sovereignty, cultivating self-sovereignty and boundaries. When you really feel, because you were asking about protecting yourself, when you really are in a self-sovereign state and you create healthy boundaries, then it's really, you don't need to protect yourself. You'll be able to maintain your consciousness, maintain your state of awareness without being influenced by the energies of others.
Here's another question. Phoebe asked, like making decisions that don't respect myself and hurt me. Yes, that is a pattern, definitely. And you might find that each time you make such a decision, you might be in a specific pattern in and of itself. Juan says, so here's an example of a specific situation. A pattern for me is to feel I'm not worthy to earn my own money. Thank you, Juan, for being vulnerable and sharing that. Everyone has patterns like this. We're all equal here. So this is perfect for Phoebe too, because it explains how, so truly, Juan's pattern of feeling that he's not worthy to earn his own money is a pattern that would lead to, that is part of a greater pattern of making decisions that don't respect himself and lead to hurt. He has gone into that greater pattern and identified a smaller sort of micro pattern that is specifically about money situations, which is excellent because precision is a doorway to consciousness. So a pattern for me is to feel I'm not worthy to earn my own money. So first of all, yes, it's so important to become aware of that pattern because then you can recognize that your feelings and thoughts of unworthiness in regards to money are not true. Then you can apply the healing techniques we're going to use in this session to clear those patterns. And you can keep doing that until the patterns are fully clear. So I think we've caught up on all the questions. Amy has a comment or question. My ego is attached to finding treatment for a chronic illness and lost mobility. So your ego is looking for treatment. I am terrified of never hiking in nature, teaching yoga. Is this ego? Yes, any fear is ego. So a fear of not hiking in nature, a fear of not being able to teach yoga is ego. It's a self-defense strategy. It's you are identifying, some part of you is identifying with an I thought that causes you to be separate from everything else. And if you were not in an I thought and you were fully conscious and receiving spirit, you could experience yoga. Even if you were in a wheelchair, you could experience it completely. So when there is no ego, there is no longer any attachment, aversion, or fear. And there is a complete surrender to the life process, to the life and death process, and whatever happens afterwards. And in that state, there's peace, there is openness, there is creativity, there's opportunity. Sometimes we look so hard for the treatment that we miss the healing that's available for us here and now. And when people are terrified and when people are really attached to something, you can bet that they're in stress and survival.
Yeah.
And that that their system is producing stress hormones that aren't supportive of healing and rejuvenation of the body. And so consciousness and release of ego, release of attachment and aversion, release of all I thoughts, release of all illusion of separation allows us to make peace with the life and death and whatever happens afterwards process. And in that peace, we rejuvenate.
Yeah, and the greatest healer is surrendering. It's when we surrender the I completely and we surrender the illness and the idea of the illness, then energy can shift. We can recalibrate, we can reset, we can actually experience something different without the moment that there's an attachment. You're going to be tied to that energy of the past. The attachment to something different is essentially saying that you're separate from that which you want, and therefore it can't happen. If you're in a state of separation or lack, you're not in the state that you want to be in. So shall we do the healing?
And I see some wonderful shares here from Amy says, thank you, that made me cry. Well, that was our intention. Just kidding. Sadness rose just imagining surrender to having no medical treatment. Well, there's definitely something there. We're so glad that we were able to be of help and to reach you in this regard. The sadness is of the ego, and that sadness can be healed as well. And Maggie and me, myself, and I, nice name, we will address these as we do the practices that we're about to do.
And if you're enjoying the workshop, if you are in alignment with a donation, we would really appreciate for ourselves and also to support Insight Timer, any donation for this workshop.
And just a reminder that if you, on our website, there are recordings of these workshops available. So the first technique we're going to use, and there are many techniques, and many techniques are good, and a combination of techniques are good. one quick question I saw that would be optimally addressed. What if ego is everything you have? That's not the case for anyone. Ego is not everything we have. Ego is like
a suit that
a suit
we wear.
that we're wearing. Yeah, clothes.
I think I published a meditation on that yesterday, on the ego and how it's just like wearing a suit. It's not you. It's not your true self. It's not your soul.
And beneath the ego, which is like a drawing that we make on a piece of paper of ourselves, right? And we just keep adding to that drawing.
I am this, I have this, I do this,
I need this,
I like this,
I don't like that, right? We make this huge drawing, and then like when we see people, we hold this drawing in front of ourselves.
This is me.
Talk to this piece of paper person. So,
and then if they don't like it, we get triggered and we feel like something's wrong.
So then we go,
the piece of paper.
So then we grab the paper and we start to erase stuff and like write new stuff on it and say, okay, this is so no one is only ego. Everyone is a child of God, a wonderful, beautiful child of God. There's not one person in this world that doesn't have the capacity to be a loving person and vulnerable person. Thank you for your generous donation, Heike. So ego is not all we have, and a life in ego is a life of suffering. A life in ego is a life of separation, a life of conflict, a life of misunderstanding, a lonely life, a life of loneliness. Ego is the source of all negative emotions. And
all fear, all pain, all suffering.
All sadness, all
ego.
Anger. When there is no ego, there is inner peace. When one is enlightened, one is no longer sad in the sense that most people experience it. When enlightened people can have compassion, enlightened people can feel the pain of others, and it is done from a place of peace and recognition that it is all part of a greater process. So,
meaning of the evolution of our souls.
No, thank you, Satnam, for your generous donation. So truly, yes, when we are enlightened, we are not sad. No. How if we are enlightened and we are filled with the light of this entire process, and the beautiful frogs and their patterns, and the butterflies and the earth and space and the stars and the synchronicities and the love that we can share with each other and the learning process of humanity, if we are receiving all of this light and the spiritual guidance of spirit and all of the incredible wonders that we can discover through consciousness, how can we be sad if we are fully resonant with that consciousness in all parts of our system?
And from the murky waters, the lotus grows.
So a spiritual teacher or an enlightened being wouldn't look at the murky water and call it bad.
It would see that from that water, the lotus blooms and flourishes. And so it's the same. The enlightened beings have the capacity to see the evolution of a soul, and there's not suffering and pain in that. There's great energy and love and compassion in that. In seeing a soul become a lotus flower, become enlightened too.
The enlightened being sees that suffering, that pain, the sadness, the anger, the hatred in other people, because the enlightened being is no longer suffering themselves. It sees the process happening in others as a womb, like where a baby grows. It sees all of the things that people are experiencing here as a part of this beautiful lotus blossoming process. And so there's peace and appreciation and an intention to serve and to help those that are suffering and that are ready to step out of suffering. So we hope that our work attracts and appeals to those people who are in suffering, conscious of their suffering, and wanting to get out of their suffering. Because there's, believe it or not, a lot of people who are in suffering, not conscious of their suffering, and not wanting to get out of suffering. And those people aren't ready yet. They need to hit their heads against the wall a little more.
And also accepting of the suffering so that they can actually get out of it.
Right, rather than trying to just escape it constantly. In essence, creating more suffering. All right, so the practices. So the first, we're going to use a voice technique. And in your throat chakra, your voice, your process of expression is very important on many levels. This chakra is sophisticated, and it can be used as an instrument in many ways. And we're going to describe 2 ways. We're going to start with one. The first way is using your voice to feel, discover, and reflect on how you really feel. So
allowing yourself to truly feel what you feel and to express it, because oftentimes we'll feel something and it won't be expressed, it will be suppressed. So it never makes its way to this chakra, which is the chakra of willpower. It's the chakra of discernment and wisdom. And when it doesn't make its way there, and it's suppressed, the energy doesn't process completely. Whereas when we express, we're in the process of starting to let the energy liberate and get transmuted through that process, because by expressing it, we get feedback as to, is this true what we're saying? Is it really a reflection of reality? And we can become conscious and discerning and wise as to what we're saying. If it's just in the form of thoughts, if it stays in the mind, for instance, then we don't have that opportunity to really look at it. What am I saying? What is it that I'm thinking all day? So let's express those patterns so that they can then be reconciled and resolved.
That's so well put. So that's the practice we're going to do. If you choose a pattern that you would like to work on.
Yeah, and if you're unsure, please send us
a message.
And we'll help you construct that statement, what you're going to say.
Well, no, we're not doing that yet, my love. That's the second part. Right now,
you're not expressing the pattern?
Yeah.
And what you feel?
You are, allow me to explain, and then we'll see. So someone mentioned defending myself has caused humiliation in the past. Now I get triggered when I need to defend myself. So if that's your pattern, then you would begin to allow yourself first to feel that pattern. And then you would begin to allow yourself to voice it. You just start voicing. I hate that I defended myself in the past and I felt humiliated. And it's not right. It's not fair. And now I'm getting triggered all the time when I need to defend myself, and I'm a good person. I shouldn't have to do this. Like, why am I constantly defending myself? You see what's going on there? We're going into the feeling and expressing it and hearing it and listening to it.
So we're giving voice, by the way, to the root chakra and the energy in the root chakra. We're letting it express what it feels.
Another pattern that someone shared. I lost it when my 17-year-old lied to me. I think it came from when my dad used to lie to us as a family. So if you were getting in touch with this pattern and then expressing it through your voice, just to yourself, by the way, not to someone else, doing this on your own.
So, for instance, I hate when my 17-year-old lies to me. It reminds me of my dad, and I hated what my dad did, and I can't believe he was lying to us, and we felt so much pain, and it was terrible. And now I'm feeling this pain again because he's lying to me, and why is he lying to me? And I'm out of control, and I can't protect him if he lies to me, blah, 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 blah.
So you're voicing it, whatever it is to you. It's going to be unique to you. So we've given you 2 examples here. We had another request. What about toxic relationships? You're welcome. What about toxic relationships?
Well, maybe we have a conscious relationship workshop that might be helpful, and then you can talk about that. You can talk about, I hate being with people who are toxic, and the people who are toxic, they hurt my feelings. And being in toxic relationship, when I'm in a toxic relationship, I feel this way. And why are people toxic? And why do they do this to me? And blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
So let everything, just let yourself express whatever, the root chakra. And you can even go into your root chakra as you're saying those things and let the root chakra express. It doesn't get to express very often because the collective consciousness doesn't like what the root chakra has to say. It's very afraid of it. It doesn't fit with our self-image. So let it for once be expressed.
Let it finally out.
And by the way, I also created a short meditation that's also available that does that, where you're allowing yourself to express while remaining conscious. You're not completely lost in the story. You're allowing yourself to express all these things while remaining conscious.
Yeah. So we're giving you a technique now. We're walking you through a technique. Right now we're explaining the technique, and in a moment we're going to guide you through it. And it's a two-part technique. The first part is to bring it all up, right? Basically vomit it all out. and this is not to believe in what you're saying. It's not because what you're saying is true. On the contrary, it's actually not true. It's not conscious.
It's to reconcile it, to see it, to truly see it. Because when it's in our mind, we may be so caught up in the story and the reactivity in our emotions that we don't see what we're saying. We don't see that it doesn't make sense, or it's not true, or it's not real.
So in this practice, and Nancy asked, how can I work with this pattern? I'm having early hair loss in my 50s and very frustrated because it affects my looks and feeling not enough. So when we do this technique now, the first part of it, and there's two parts to this technique. When we do the first part, if you'll just relax, and let's do it now. If you'll just relax, hopefully by now you have the pattern that you want to work on, and you're focusing on that pattern and allowing yourself to feel the pain of that pattern and the different pains of that pattern and projections and fears and self-judgments, everything about that pattern.
And becoming aware of any part of you that judges that pattern, or that imagines that other people would judge that pattern, and just observing that as the pattern, as you get in touch with the pattern and you feel it, and you feel the energy of it in your root chakra.
And your second and third chakras, and allowing yourself to start expressing everything you feel about that pattern. So if it was hair loss, you might say, I hate that I'm 50 and losing my hair, and I look like I have less hair, and I don't feel as pretty as I used to be, and I don't feel good enough, and why do women have to be held to these standards of beauty? I'm more than my beauty. So whatever it is for you, these are just examples. And now we're going to be quiet, and we're going to hold the space for you here to just process, to just get it out, to just give voice to all of those unconscious fears, all those unconscious recordings of ego. And so right now, if you'll just start speaking, start saying the patterns out loud. Start voicing the way you feel. And just let it all out.
Yeah, and it's important that you use your voice. So if you're not alone, maybe for those 2 minutes, isolate yourself so that you can do that. You can voice it. You can hear yourself saying those words, and notice what you're saying, and notice the tone, and notice how it changes as you express, how the changes in your emotions and your emotional state.
Yeah. Voicing the patterns, voicing the feelings, giving voice to those child parts of yourself. Letting it all come up and process through your voice, which is an essential part of processing things as they go from your lower energy centers to your higher energy centers and back to spirit and God. Letting the energy flow through your throat chakra and vocalizing, voicing, putting into words, speaking out.
Becoming aware of it's bad, it's wrong for me to feel this way, to have this pattern, and just simply continuing to express.
Voicing out all the anger, the hatred, the pain, the judgment.
The sadness, the fear.
accepting yourself, accepting all parts of yourself, all those parts of yourself that feel that way and those ways.
And connecting and feeling the liberation of energy that is unfolding as you express this pattern. How the energy is moving from the lower energy centers up into your throat.
Okay. So were you able to express some things? Did you allow yourself to give voice to the parts that have been suppressed and denied and rejected and shunned and judged? To just actually really let yourself be. Let yourself feel what you feel. We grow up in a society that says, oh, you can't feel that. You can't think that.
And as children, when we if our parents tell us something and we disagree, it's not like we're accepted or it's not supported. Most parents don't support that process, and so the child learns to suppress, to not express, to not allow for those energies and emotions to be experienced, and therefore they just stay suppressed. Just like if a parent is not allowing the child to do that, to process in that way, they too are in suppression and repression. And so what is being embodied and modeled by the parents becomes our own process. So we're teaching you a new way. Of course, we don't recommend doing that in front of someone. If you're having a pattern and it's triggered by someone else, we don't recommend that you do that. And actually, when we don't do this process in the way that we did it consciously, it ends up that we do say those things when we're in conflict with someone, and that's not helpful. That's not constructive. So always doing that for yourself, by yourself.
Elizabeth says, I feel like first Steve says, yeah. And Juan says, yeah, I said stuff. Felt very good. Good. And Elizabeth says, I feel like I have done this to my children and now they have to suffer with these patterns. Well, we have good news for you. It was perfect, however it unfolded. And your children gained from that. And it will support them in their soul process to have experienced that. And in the process of working through that, they will learn wonders. And that's what it's all about. And so whatever part of you feels bad about this, feels like you did anything wrong, is
express that.
Yeah, and it's just ego. It's unconscious. It's not. Yeah. There was nothing bad. You did nothing bad. You did nothing wrong. That's just more ego keeping us in a cycle of self-judgment and pain and suffering.
And had you known differently, you would have done differently. And so it's the unfoldment of this pattern, right, that was in your maybe family with your ancestors, and now you're becoming aware of it, and by becoming aware of it, you're actually healing it, not just in you, also in prior generations and in your children. Mm-hmm. So even if they're not conscious of it, by working through it, by resolving it in yourself, you actually change the energy, you shift the energy in the lineage. So it's very important to focus on that.
Yeah, because it's not you. It's not your fault. If you got the pattern from your parents, is it their fault? But what if they got it from their parents and their parents? So then you realize, oh, it's just humanity's process. That we're all connected, and it's humanity's process. Elizabeth says, yes, I see I was suffering. Louise sends a heart, and Corinne says, life-changing, heart. And thank you, Corinne.
Thank you.
Elizabeth says, thank you. So technique number 2.
So so if you end there, This is just one part.
You haven't healed.
You haven't healed the pattern.
It's just a part. Remember, we said it's dynamic. We're not giving you a fast food, one size fits all solution. You do this and we will heal you and it'll be done. We're not doing that here. There is no trick, no hack. The healing process is not designed to be circumvented through a trick or a hack or any mental trick, really. So it's a process. Do you want to address this question, my love?
I can't read it.
Okay, so Amy says, Elizabeth, my mom's pain past to me gave empathy that helped me teach, love, heal others. Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
And that's transmutation, by the way.
Transmutation.
Which is what we're teaching you today. We're teaching you to transmute, to express so that it can be transmuted. If it can be expressed, if it can't even exist, if we can't accept it, we can't change it.
If you are a beautiful lotus flower, would you look down at the muck that feeds you all your nutrients and say it's nasty? No. You would say it's good. It's part of the process. Maggie says, so by my freaking out on the child, was letting it out healthy? What a question. Definition of healthy. Was it part of the spiritual and God process? Yes. Was it bad? No. Is it all good? Yes. Do we always have an opportunity to make choices? Yes. Do we learn from all our choices? Yes.
Yeah, so healthy, unhealthy, all these dualistic ways of looking at it, they don't help us to really get to learn the lesson, right? So it's not about it being healthy or not healthy. It's about it happened and accepting it and understanding where it stems from so that it can be transformed. And it's difficult, especially when we're talking about our children. And if our children have experienced pain as a result of our conditioning, which resulted from the conditioning of our parents, then it can feel really very challenging to just accept that and to love ourselves. And by loving yourself and not trying to label it as healthy or not healthy, you're helping your children to also accept themselves and to not look at things dualistically and to understand the lessons of life that unfold, the lessons of our souls that unfold however they unfold.
Yeah.
So not simplifying.
And in addition to that, there is something worth noting, a very detrimental dynamic right now, in a way that's holding us back, is that in the ego process of humanity, there is this belief and expectation that parents are perfect. And that is just a belief and expectation. It's not real or true or necessary. And we would suggest nobody is perfect. No parent is perfect. No parent can prepare their child for life perfectly. There's no such thing. A parent is just supposed to all of a sudden transcend all ego when they have children. That's really not happening. So parents being kind to themselves and being open to a process of self-discovery, including discovering parts of themselves that were fearful and judgmental with their kids, is really important, because it opens the door to their kids also doing the same thing, and for humanity doing the same thing. Maggie says, I forgive myself first, then spoke to him about the love I feel for him. He's my stepchild. That's wonderful. Amy says, can Maggie talk to her child and help heal both of them? An opportunity instead of guilt? That's wonderful too. We can connect to people in a loving way and humbly reflect on what we learned about ourselves and our process and our ego, and share that with them if they're open and receptive, if they're ready to use that information positively and constructively. And that can be of great help and benefit to those when there are two people who are willing to be vulnerable together. So on to step 2, because all we've done so far is we've given voice. So we've helped bring things up in process. Step 2 is finding a statement that we can drop into the center of this big pattern, right? This pattern that we just voiced in so many ways. Find one statement that we can use to drop into the center of that pattern and to heal the pattern, to break it apart.
To transmute its energy. You liberate it, and now we're transmuting it. We're consciously evolving that energy.
So what is that statement for you? This is the time to think about it. So if we take an example of having been a parent and having a child, we can say something like, I love all parts of my parenting journey. And I appreciate all parts of my parenting journey and this process of life. Or we could say, I completely forgive myself for all parts of my process of learning and evolving. So what is that statement for you? If it's regarding money and not feeling self-worth regarding money, you can say, I am a wonderful child of God with many skills and things to contribute, and I love myself. I am abundance is an excellent one. And I would recommend one for yours specifically. I am abundance and full of value. Amy says,
and I am worthy of receiving.
And I am worthy of receiving.
Always.
Amy says, how about this one? Universe, I accept my chronic illness as an opportunity to heal what I don't yet see. That is excellent. So if you want help with a statement, now's the time to ask, because we're about to go into the practice.
So from what you don't want to feel when you're in the pattern to what you do want to feel and experience. That's what's happening. The pattern is like, don't want to feel that, or attached to something because we don't want to feel something else. And we're playing that out. Now we're liberating the energy. And now, where do we put this energy?
Maggie says, thank you so much for this wonderful advice. Thank you. Chloe says, I often feel like an outsider. How about, I am connected and we are one? That's
wonderful.
Yeah. Julie says, I accept the person who triggers me. That is great. And I love and accept all people, no matter what, wherever they are.
Shall we do it, my love?
Well, we have a question here from Phoebe. I am in a relationship with an unavailable person and very attached to the relationship. It's harmful to me. What's the statement? I love myself completely, and through that love, I draw those who will love me completely. I love myself completely, and fully deserve someone who can love me, who is available to love me. T is asking, how do you transmute envy, like sister's newborn baby? Would you like me to address that?
Well, it's kind of generic. That said, like what? Sisters,
like
newborn?
Sisters, so if the sister is giving attention, for example, to the newborn baby and one feels envy, one might say, I give myself all the love and attention that I deserve and need.
Yeah, and resonating with abundance and receiving. So that we're not focused on where we're not receiving, because that's what happens when we are afraid of not experiencing something. We'll focus on it instead of focusing on where the energy is and flows, and allowing that to be our experience.
Elizabeth asked about getting triggered by sun. And she says, her statement is, I see his pain and I stay in love and empathy and consciousness. That's good. And you can actually use the statement to further educate those parts of yourself, like so. If you use the statement that says, I love all parts of my son, including his pain and the ways he acts out, because it is part of his beautiful growth and evolutionary process. I love and accept all parts of my son, including his pain, and it is part of his beautiful evolutionary process. Julie said, I accept and love all people no matter what. That's wonderful. Carla says, I let go all the insecurities in the way I look at me to be around. Good, Carla. And rather than saying I let go of something bad, if you'll focus on the positive and say, rather than letting go of all the insecurities, you'll say, I feel and understand and recognize completely my goodness and all of the ways in which I am good and beautiful. Affirmation for the hair loss could be, I love myself completely in all ways. And I am beautiful inside and out. For grieving loss of husband of 30 years, I'm reading a comment here. Grieving loss of husband of 30 years. I'm on in the process. On in the process. Feel others are pushing and trying to fix me. I am not broken. What's the statement? I love and accept my process of healing. And my process of healing is perfect, just as it is. T said, Deb, I hope that was helpful. T says, thank you so much for hearing us and addressing our concerns. You're welcome. That's what this is for. That's what all of our workshops are intended to do. And we care about you, and we want to hear from you, and we care about what you're feeling, and none of what you're going through is bad or wrong, or in any way.
So whatever the statement that you created, that you generated, if you'll focus in your heart on feeling it, and if that statement, if you're not feeling it in your heart, then whatever else you feel in your heart that is in alignment with that experience that you want to create, that you choose to experience. So really connecting in your heart, because if the statement is said from the mind, it's not going to energetically be as facilitative. It can be another process of really staying with the pattern and not really transmuting the pattern. So if you'll move into the space of your heart and relax and bring your awareness there and feel whatever it is that you choose to experience today.
And if you'll begin to say your statement, and this is a very important part of this practice, what I'm about to describe. If you'll listen and feel your voice and your throat and your chest as you say this statement. You can hear in your voice parts of you that are not resonant with it, with the statement. You can hear and feel in your voice parts of you that are not in alignment with this conscious statement. And continue repeating the statement until you can hear in your voice the truth, that you are embodying the truth of this statement. So at first it might sound like, I love myself. And then you might go, I love myself.
And then there might be resistance to that, and you'll hear it in your voice.
So working with it until you feel it all coming from your heart. So you can say from your heart, I love myself.
So that the energy that flows into the throat comes from the heart. The heart is informing the throat. The heart, and so let yourself improvise whatever statement. Maybe your first statement will evolve and change as you really connect to your heart and let yourself express from that place.
And really listen. The first few times you say it, it was not going to be perfect. And the whole purpose of this practice is to hear yourself. It's not to get it right, so to speak. It's to hear how you're saying it and use your voice as an instrument to embody it more fully and to identify when you're embodying it more fully.
And to align yourself with the truth of your statement.
Notice if your voice cracks, that's a sign of subconscious resistance and blockage. So if you go, I forgive myself, you can evolve that into I forgive myself. And even that right there is like first, it's like root chakra. You can lift it a little bit, get a little bit more mental actually. I forgive myself. And you can keep working on it until it reaches your heart and you really feel it in your heart and I forgive myself.
Until it flows really effortlessly into your throat.
From your heart. Whatever the statement is for you, speaking it fully from your heart. Embodying this energy and grounding this energy into all parts of your being. Listening to the quality of your voice begin to ring more true to you, begin to sound more true and complete to you. Listening as you learn how to vocalize this energy from your heart. Listening to what your voice sounds like as you really begin to embody this energy truly and completely and in all parts of yourself. And listening for any sounds and hints in your voice that show you that, there's still some parts that aren't on board, still some parts that are not embodying this fully. Repeating your statement. Feeling it fully. Hearing it flow beautifully from your chest and your throat. From your heart and your soul.
And allowing for any resistance and energy of resistance to flow into that process, to bring more energy as you continue to repeat the statement and work through the resistance and Connect in your heart. Transmute this energy from your heart, from your love of yourself. Unconditional love for yourself, for your patterns and parts.
And letting that true sound fill your entire being. The true sound coming from your voice, filling all aspects of you throughout all time and space. Seeing that sound resonate with your baby self in the womb, with your child self, with your teenage self, with your adult self, with your old self, with your past lifetimes, with your future lifetimes. Letting that sound travel all the way to God and all the way down to the center of the earth. Being this sound of your voice, speaking this truth completely. And allowing yourself to bring this energy back with you as you open your eyes. And even with your eyes open, still embodying this, still feeling this.
So that your environment, your space, all objects, all people, all relationship, and everything that unfolds from now is saturated with this energy that you've embodied and cultivated and expressed.
I think this is a pretty good wrapping up point.
Agreed.
Sheila says, this is perfect as it connects with what I'm also learning, boundaries, which is difficult, hard. Yes, this is very much this process of using the voice, and it helps so much with boundaries. It's a process of establishing your boundaries, your truth, your sovereignty.
Exactly, experiencing self-sovereignty, which is not something that's modeled in society for many reasons, including the fact that we evolved and survived as a tribe. So being self-sovereign is not necessarily something that the collective consciousness supports.
Wendy, we offer replays of this on our website, and we have other workshops available there too.
Yeah, so probably by Tuesday it will be available.
It'll
register.
It'll take a few days for us to
process it and upload it.
So
thank you.
Thank you. And if we'll just announce the next workshop, it will be happening in two weeks? 2 weeks.
March 5th, on Friday, March 5th at the same time, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
We usually do every 2 weeks. Every Friday, every 2 weeks.
And we'll talk about understanding and healing your chakras. So we'll go into depth into really the chakra system from many different vantage points, and help you understand the energy in your chakras, and how when you understand the energy in your chakras and you clear blockages, you can experience a different reality. Yeah.
And our website is dexterandalessandrina.com.
I think we're not allowed to give our website.
There's a link
That's
to it.
Yeah, you can see it on our profile on Inside Timer. If you go to our profile page, then you'll see our website. And
thank you, Juan, for saying that you love our meditations and the music. you can look in each meditation. In the description, we'll include a link to the source of the music, to where we get the song.
Unless it's music that we purchase,
Oh, okay.
that's licensed. Yeah, licensed music, we don't put those links.
Yes, if you want to know, you can email us.
Yeah, or you can also, there's apps that listen to the music, and then they tell you, you download that to your phone and they tell you what it is. That's another way.
So Heike sends a beautiful rose. Shanta says, thank you. Oh yeah, I already answered that. What is your website? Deb says, very grateful, helps so much. Thanks for helping to heal my journey. Thank you, Deb. We're so happy to be a part of it and to contribute something that can be of help. Me, myself, and I says, thank you. You're welcome, you three.
Yeah, and thank you to all the participants. Thank you for everyone for bringing your questions, for being open and vulnerable and humble in this process with us. We're really grateful.
Yes.
And if you enjoy the workshop, please donate. We spend a lot of time and energy creating content, and your donations help us to continue to create free content so that people who cannot afford the workshops can have access to this information. And of course, for Insight Timer, it also enables them to continue to operate through your generous donations.
Yes, it's the way that we put food on the table and continue to do this is by you donating or you booking private sessions and things like that. So thank you. And Shanta says, amazing, I love your meditations. Maggie says, I'm so excited to find you. Star kiss face, palm touching.
And next week as meditation is going to be I love all of me.
Look, me, myself, and I says, ego, ego, ego. Maybe it's time to change my name. Oh boy. That's funny.
So thank you again, and we hope that you can join in 2 weeks. And again, if you can't, all of our workshops are recorded, so you can have access to them.
Wishing you the best. Great spending these 2 hours with you. Bye.
Have a wonderful day.